Welcome everyone. We're here for a very happy occasion, a new Monica McInerney book. It's been a long time we've been waiting for this one, so it's more auspicious than ever. Now, Monica's early life sounds like something out of her story itself. She grew up one of 7 children in the Clare Valley in South Australia, and her dad was a station master. Her mum worked at the local library. But from then on, life got rather real. Monica had to work for a living, and she's done everything from working in the music industry to hospitality work, including waitressing and hotel cleaning. But these days, when she visits a hotel, it's there to either stay or to write about it, as she does. There's a gorgeous boutique hotel in the Godmothers. But let's start off by welcoming Monica and finding just a little bit more about her first. Hello, Monica.
Hello, Mary Lou. It's great to talk to you again.
Good to have you here. Now, we have a very limited time. I'm just going to start the timer so that we're all on the same page.
We'll talk quickly.
So many questions, and some great questions from our audience as well. So it's great. So first up, Monica, congratulations not only on your new novel, your 13th novel, but on 20 years in the publishing industry. Can you take us back 20 years ago to when you were first dabbling your toe in this world? How was it for you back then?
I suppose in a funny way, I've actually been in the publishing industry for 30 years because for 10 years before I became a writer, I worked behind the scenes in publishing as a book publicist in Australia and Ireland. So I promoted and toured with authors like Roald Dahl and Tim Winton and Margaret Mahy and all sorts of amazing writers. And then it was only after I left publishing, and my husband and I had moved to Tasmania, that I missed being around stories and talking about books and words all day. And I started writing short stories. And so I wrote probably dozens of short stories in about 2 years, I think, sent them out hoping they'd get published. Back they all came, rejected. But I was just loving the process of writing so much. I didn't mind the rejections. And then a beautiful thing happened. In a space of about 2 weeks, 3 of my short stories got accepted. And that gave me the confidence to start working on my first novel. And that, after 2 years of writing, that became my first novel, A Taste for Comedy. And that was published in 2000. So my lead-in was short stories.
It's very interesting. We do have a couple of questions from our audience. So how did you get started writing your first book? That's there. But another question in a similar vein is, did you attend many writers' workshops or belong to any writers' groups before you wrote your first book?
Mary Lou, I didn't, and thanks to everybody for the great questions you all sent in. Thank you. No, I didn't actually, and I was supposed to have gone to university to do an arts degree when I finished secondary school, and I actually deferred for a year, and in that year I got a job as wardrobe girl on Here's Humphrey, the children's TV show. So I never did go back and do that arts degree either. But I think I've learned how to write by being a reader. And to this day, I still read 2, sometimes 3 books a week when I'm on a really good run. And I think you can learn everything you need to know about being a writer, if that's the way you want to go, is through reading, because you can work out, why am I interested in these characters? Why am I still turning the pages? So a library and bookshops have been my university and writing courses, really.
Let's talk about the inspiration for the Godmothers. So here we are, all these years later, your 13th book. So please give us a little snippet of what it's about.
The story of the Godmothers, it is, all of my books are family comedy dramas is how I describe them, because I love to invent a fictional family. I think every family is full of drama and every family is full of comedy. But this is, in fact, a family mystery in lots of ways. I'm really intrigued personally by the secrets that one generation keeps from the next. Sometimes for good reasons, sometimes for bad reasons. And I had 2 family stories that sowed the seeds for the Godmothers. One of them is from my childhood. One of my father's half-sisters, so an aunt of mine, died in mysterious circumstances in 1957. And I grew up, this is before I was born, but I grew up hearing talk about that aunt and her drowning death. And I always thought there was more to it, but none of the adults would ever talk to me about it, as, you know, if it had been an accident or had it been something else. And that stayed with me all my life, that idea of who knew the real story of that. More recently, my older sister, Mari, turned 50, and her oldest friend gave her a collection of the emails and letters that the two of them had been exchanging in really action-packed years of their lives in their 30s. They talk about their friends, their families, their relationships, apparently in forensic detail. And my sister has made her husband promise that if anything ever happens to her, the first thing he has to do is destroy that book, because there's no way she wants her kids reading anything that is in that. And of course, her siblings. So I'm so intrigued, I want to get my hands on that as well. But it's that idea of what one generation got up to or know that the next one doesn't, and for what reasons. And that was the starting point for the Godmothers. And I wanted to write, I love writing about the different relationships within a family. I've written about husbands and wives and aunts and nieces and brothers and sisters. And I was very interested in the godmother relationship because it's a chosen one. And in this book, Eliza, the main character, has two godmothers who were her mother Jeannie's two best friends. And they know all the family secrets, Olivia and Maxie, the two godmothers. And the book is really the mystery of Eliza trying to find out more about her mother's life, find out about the father she's never met, and is she being helped or hindered by her two godmothers? So that's the path that leads you through the story.
And a question from our audience is: did you have a favourite godmother?
In the novel or in real life?
No, in your real life.
In real life, I had a godmother. In fact, I never had a godfather. I mean, most people have godparents growing up, and in my six brothers and sisters all had a godmother and a godfather. And my godmother was another of my dad's sisters who was very religious. And Mum and Dad both felt, excuse me, being slightly flippant, but it was like two for the price of one, because she was, she could fulfill both roles really. And I think that's also why the idea of a godmother has really stayed with me, because that's what I had. I didn't have the book's not called The Godparents. And she was a very interesting character. She had grown up through the Depression, and she was diagnosed with polio as a 14-year-old. And that had an enormous shaping influence on her life. Like, she had to spend a year in a hospital for infectious diseases as a 14-year-old. And her mum, my grandmother, would come down from the family farm to stand, like it would take a whole day to get down to the hospital, to just stand outside the hospital and wave at her little daughter in the hospital. And so scenes through the pandemic have really reminded me of how difficult that was. But I think, as I said, I think my own godmother was shaped by that kind of difficult upbringing, and you could never get any real insights into what she thought about things. She was very good at evasive answers, pardon me. And I think that's led to this as well, the whole idea of a secretive godmother. So she died in 2008, but I'm enjoying talking about her a lot and remembering through the process of this book.
Let's talk about Eliza. She's in a very organised, or she's a very, very highly organised woman. She's the godchild, but she sets off. She's called by her godmothers. She sets off to the UK, and she ends up living in this amazing hotel. Now, I'm wondering, is this hotel inspired, which one of her godmothers, Olivia, is running? It's filled with art. It's absolutely gorgeous. Was this hotel inspired by a real hotel?
It's little elements of lots of hotels that I've visited, got to go and have a drink in, or stayed in, or just explored when I've been on a research trip, to be honest. But I did. It's set in Edinburgh. Eliza lives in Melbourne at the beginning of the book, and exactly as you said, she's, because of this tragic event that's happened when she was a younger woman, she's turned her life into the smallest, safest, very lonely life. that she needed. And then she's suddenly catapulted and finds herself in Edinburgh, where Olivia runs this boutique hotel. And I went to Edinburgh a few times for research trips and found an area called Haymarket. And there are quite a few hotels which have been established in the rows of beautiful terrace hotels, terrace houses there. And Edinburgh is such a beautiful city for, long winding, curving streets with these gorgeous sandstone buildings. So I walked around Edinburgh until I found a street that I thought, that's where my hotel's going to be, and stayed in one quite similar to, in terms of it took up 3 terrace houses, but the decor, everything else came out of my imagination, which was lovely. So because every day when I was going up to my attic to write, I thought, I'm going to be in this gorgeous hotel, and Eliza gets given the best room in the hotel. So I was living vicariously, Mary Lou, for a few months. I have a research photo I can show you if you like to see
yes,
me. Yes, so this is me in Edinburgh. In January, and that's on one of the rows of terrace houses. Here's me peeking through there, sorry, but and that's the sort of setting for the Montgomery Hotel in the Godmothers. So that was in January. I had been there in April the year before, in 2019. My husband and I went over to do the initial research, and then I had this gorgeous trip in January with my 18-year-old Australian niece who was visiting, and she came with me for 3 days, and we double-checked every single location in Edinburgh together, carrying the manuscript with us. And, I'd stand there and read out the scenes and the settings to make sure I had everything exactly right. So that's, so if anybody's reading the book, that's what the Montgomery Street looks like.
Ah, that's fabulous. Thank you. And now the other thing is it is a boutique hotel with a lot of art. And art plays an important role in this book, just not as decoration, but there are a few plot points around it as well. So how did the art insinuate itself into the Godmothers?
Well, for me, I think, art plays a very important part in my life and in everybody's lives. I think we've all realised that through the pandemic and lockdowns, that how much when life is tricky, we all find solace in beautiful art or beautiful music, or be it literature, films, things that involve our imagination, that take us out of reality. And everybody in the Godmothers has had loss of some sort, or have an ache for something that they had and is gone, or something that they've never had and they'd long to have. And each of them have found solace in different forms of art. Olivia is Eliza's godmother in the Edinburgh Hotel. She had trained as an art historian and then met her Scottish husband, and so she has been put in charge of the collection that's the boutique hotel is quite famous for. Eliza herself is an amateur artist, and through very difficult times in her life, she has turned to painting and to the solace and the absorption of painting as a way to distract her mind. And other people use, without spoilers, photography is used by another character, and children's puzzles by another. So there's ways that art can take us out of ourselves and also join us with other people too. I think and that happens throughout the story too.
There is a particular painting that you write about in this book. So what's the significance of this one?
Two of the characters, I probably won't go into too much detail again, because the book has only been out a week and I'm not sure if people have had a chance to read it yet while they're watching. But there's a painting that means a great deal to two characters, and it's a painting that mattered when younger years and more recent too. So I had a gorgeous day in London. I went into the Tate Gallery in London. I hope everyone can hear the plane that's flying over, or not hear it.
No,
I went into the Tate Gallery in London while I was researching the London scenes in The Godmothers, and I walked in as one of the characters does, and not knowing which painting I was looking for, but I was going to go into every gallery until I found one that felt like it emotionally leapt off the wall at me. And this was going to be the painting that would matter to two of the characters. So to show and tell again, this is me at the in the Tate Gallery beside the painting that as soon as I walked into this room in the Tate, I thought, there is my painting. It's called Carnation Lily, Lily Rose, and it's by an American artist called John Singer Sargent. And as you can see, it's enormous. Like, you know, I'm 5'7", and that's how it's towering over me. And it is the most glorious painting to look at in great detail. It's in a spring garden, and it's two little girls lighting lanterns in preparation for a family party of some sort. And this is a recurring image through the book. So if anybody's reading the book and wonders what that painting, you can Google it if you like. But there's a sneak preview of it in the Tate Gallery.
I got to admit, I did Google it. I had
Did
no
you?
idea it was that big.
It's huge. It's absolutely huge.
Now, you mentioned grief before, and it's something you and I have talked about during your tour for the Trip of a Lifetime. There was an element of grief in there, and certainly in the House of Memories, you explore the death of the child and grief there. So grief seems to, be a recurring theme in your books. I'm wondering, is there something in the water in Dublin, or is it just that heart connecting, sometimes heart-wrenching, bittersweet melancholy that you're attracted to in some way?
I think it's a great question, Marilou. I think I am shaped by grief. I'm shaped by grief and love as a human being, I think. As we spoke earlier, I was very lucky to grow up as the middle child of a, big, loving, noisy family of 9 and 7 kids. And I started writing in 1999 when I was writing my first novel, and my father died in March 2000. He'd been diagnosed with cancer, and we knew he had a year to live. So I was writing my first book through that last year of his life. And when he died, I could not believe, one, how much it hurt, and two, how much the whole world tilted for me, how a whole family changed shape, how everything that I had always felt sure of, the security of knowing Dad was there and that the ground was solid under my feet, it tipped. And that was a quite an extraordinary time in my life to realise what and I've read since that, grief is the price we pay for love. And that's what I learned. And I think because I've gone on to write family stories, and I think they are there's a lot of love and warmth and comedy in my novels, but they all have a shadow side. And it's often grief, because the more I talked about people after my own experiences, and very many subsequent griefs that I've been through, because I'm 55 years old, and no human gets through life without feeling, lots of different sorts of pains and sorrows and losses of friends, personal losses, things I would love to have happened that didn't happen, and you have to, come to terms with that. And the more I talk to other people about being a human being, and we all go through it. We all go through that in different ways. And this book is very much a book about being shaped by grief, but not being wholly shaped by it, by being affected by grief. You can move through. Grief is an extraordinary emotion. It's a very strong, complicated emotion for a novelist to write about, I think, and as is love, because love can come in so many guises too. But you can move through the different stages of grief. And for me as a writer and as an observer of people, I find that very interesting, that it can have a very long lead time. Some people will never recover from a loss. Some people find themselves a different sort of person because of it. And as I said, everybody in this novel is mourning something or longing for something that they don't have. And that's grief too, in a way, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Olivia's relationship with her husband, who's in a nursing home. There's all kinds of layers going on in this book. It's beautiful, and it's so wonderfully well written and heartfelt.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
There is a lot of humour in this book as well. Olivia's mother-in-law living in this gorgeous hotel comes to mind. She is a piece of work, and the scenes with her are just so over the top. It's just gorgeous. And then there's young Sullivan, who Eliza meets on the plane. Eliza has a fear of flying, and she's seated next to this. How old is he?
He's, as the book begins, he's 7 weeks from turning 12. He's very specific about that. So he's 11, but about to turn 12.
He's very specific about everything. And he loves to play Scrabble online. So I loved him even more. But I was wondering about him. I know that you've been very close to your nephews and nieces as they've grown up. Was he perhaps based on someone that you know?
He's a little element of all sorts of things. I have a very good friend in Dublin who's the son of one of my best friends, and she has a son who I have day trips out with. Sometimes he and I will just go, we've been to the zoo together, or we have a day trip out in Dublin, and he has a fantastic vocabulary like Sullivan does in the novel. I mean, Sullivan is not my friend, but I've greatly enjoyed the friendship of a 12-year-old, or he's 10, so that kind of age group. And I've got, as I said, lots of nephews, and I just find them so funny at that age, because they're on that cusp of being very earnest, but they're very particular too. And so Sullivan was just a dream character to write, and I loved it every time he stepped in. Like, he was only supposed to be on the plane, that as you mentioned, that Eliza's very scared of flying, and he's calms her down on the flight. And but I just had so much fun, and he and Eliza were getting on so well that he becomes a major character through the whole book. And that's one of the fun things about when you're writing, because I don't plot beforehand. I know my group of people. I know what I describe it as an emotional explosion that's going to happen to them, and that's going to set the plot up and running. But beyond that, I make it up literally as I'm going along, through with the first draft. It goes through many, many drafts and edits, but that very initial, when the whole story is down for the first time. And so Sullivan was a surprise character for me, but I just couldn't let him go. And Celine, the evil mother-in-law, was another one too. I had to cut out I reckon probably 40,000 words of scenes with both of them, because I was just having so much fun writing, but they didn't need to, they actually weren't, part of the plot. So I've got like a whole, I could do novellas with each of them if I wanted.
Oh, I'd love a Sullivan novella. Actually, I'd love a Celine novella. They're both fabulous.
It might happen.
Now, I think you might have had fun writing Maxie too. She's the other godmother we haven't talked about yet. So she's an actress, and she's lots of fun. She has that sense of drama and charisma that you expect in an actress. And she's also kind of childlike as well. So I'm wondering, how did you go about choosing? There's Olivia, and then there's Maxie. I mean, they're not related, but I'm just wondering how you said how you have a cast of characters to begin with, but those two particular personalities, how do they evolve while you're writing?
With the two of them, because I knew from the start that it was going to be about the godmother relationship, and Eliza's mother, Jeannie, is quite a troubled woman, and there's scenes going back that you discover, Jeannie is a younger woman, and the friendship between Olivia and Maxie and Jeannie, they all went to quite a religious boarding school together, and were kind of the bold girls, really. They were always a bit separate and, up to no good and that kind of thing. So they have a friendship that was very, very strongly forged at school. And I was also, that's another layer that runs through the book. It's about Eliza and her pilgrimage, if you like, about her father and her mother. But it's also the story of a friendship between three women over their lives. And I wanted to write, like, Olivia, who's the one in the boutique hotel, she's very, I'm sort of sitting differently now, I'm talking about her, but
yes.
she's very controlled. She needs to be, because she's become a stepmother as a young woman. She's now found herself running a hotel. Her much loved husband has dementia, and she's having to mourn his loss, even though he hasn't passed away. And Maxie was always the kind of, now here I'm sitting differently now too. Maxie was always the dramatic type, and an actor, and she's a successful actor. She's on a drama series in the UK that's very, very popular, and she's very well known. And I'm interested in the way that within a friendship, you make allowances for each other over the years, but also how you find yourself falling back into those patterns. Like if Maxie, as a young woman, Max is just being flighty, or, that's just her being dramatic, you can get away with a lot for the rest of your life. Like there's a few scenes where somebody needs to be the adult in the situation. And Maxie goes, oh no, I can't, I'll just get too upset. And she might not. She's a 50-year-old woman. She should be able to cope with those situations. But I'm really interested in, when I'm writing my characters, why they are like they are now, and how much you can get away with sometimes because of what people believe you to be. So it's a story about that as well, about, you know, your own self-image, I suppose.
Now, Maxie does take us to Gretna Green for a wedding. Now, you've mentioned your research. It sounds as though it's totally meticulous if you're standing there with your manuscript and ticking everything off to be right. So I'm guessing
I am, yeah.
you went to Gretna Green.
I did, and I've got photographic proof. Here I am with the sign in Gretna Green. For people that don't know, Gretna Green's on the border of Scotland and England, and it's historically famous for I think centuries for being since 1754 that people went there to elope. So lots of people in lots of books over the years have run off to Gretna Green to get married, and I wanted just my characters to go there to get for a wedding, and so John, my husband, and I went there for a couple of nights and it's the most extraordinary thing. It's a wedding theme park, basically. I had no idea such a thing existed, and there's a big hotel by it, which I haven't got the photo of here, but you sit in the hotel and there's just brides and grooms sitting at the next table, because people go there for either big weddings or they want to just, you know, literally run away and have a really little quiet wedding. But there's a cottage there, a blacksmith cottage, and you organise to get, have your ceremony. And then there's this anvil, this famous anvil at Gretna Green in this blacksmith's cottage. And the moment that you announce that you're married, the person conducting the wedding hits the anvil. So the sound revolves around the room, and that marks that you're officially married. So it's all these, you know, traditions and rituals there. So it was a fascinating place, you know, to visit. And I was poking my nose into this door and that door and got asked to leave because I thought it was, you know, just a tour group being shown around one of the weddings. And in fact, it was a real wedding. And it's me like looking around. So I had to kind of get out quickly. But as I said, it's such a theme park. For example, you can get Gretna Green tea towels, which have every, you know, like all the different buildings involved, and there's sculptures here and there and little arbours that you can stand under to, you know, have your wedding photos taken. Fascinating place. I'm sure there's documentaries been made about it, but no, I loved having a look at that.
That's fantastic. Another fantastic location in this book is a castle. Now, we can't talk too much about it because there's a plot twist and another plot. There are lots of twists in this book that will just keep you transfixed until right to the very end. So this castle involves one of those. So we're not going to talk about why we're going to look at a castle, but the writing of it was so evocative. I'd love to see it in real life. I'm sure you've got a photo there of it too.
I do. This is it's one of my favourite castles in Ireland, and that's me standing in front of it on a very, very cold January day. And again, I would love to sort of talk a little bit more about it because it's got a fascinating history, but I can't. But if you read the Godmothers, it's all in there. But that, again, it's one of the, you know, I take my location research really seriously. I try to, because I have lots of international settings in all of my books, and people visit so many places now that, you know, I know from emails and I get from readers, which I always love to get, they said, you know, that you reminded me I went there 2 years ago, and I want to make sure that I get it right. So for me to actually spend physical time in everywhere that I describe. So that's, again, if you're reading the Godmothers, and when I do start talking about that, so that's it from one angle. And then in summertime, so this is it with, there's a beautiful river and a bridge nearby. In the summertime, they grow these beautiful flower boxes. Wow. So this is the castle towers over this Irish town.
That is beautiful.
Yeah,
that's absolutely lovely. I'm just having a look. We are running out of time. I knew I'd have too many questions. I've got pages of questions, but let's have one from one of our audience members. And this one is, it has been a few years between books. So the question is, how long did it take you to write this, The Godmothers?
I'll give the quick answer here. It took about 18 months. I had worked on another book for 2 years before The Godmothers, and when I finished writing 200,000 words of that book, I realised that that was one I'd needed to write, but it didn't need to be published. Wow. So that's why it's taken me this long for this book. That's why it's been 3 years between books for me. I had written another whole book, but for lots of different reasons. Sometimes books you write, and therefore lots of readers. Sometimes you need to write. This when I'm talking about creativity before. Sometimes you need to write purely to write. So I have a book on my laptop at home in Dublin that I'm the only person that's ever read it. and that will always be the case. So it took 3 years in terms of time for my last book, The Truth of a Lifetime, for the Godmothers, but the actual writing of this one, about 18 months. And I loved the experience. It was, I thoroughly enjoyed all of the characters. There's a lot of, as I said, there's a lot of shadow and sorrow, but I also laughed a lot while I was writing it, which is always kind of a funny thing to say, because, you know, I'm at home in my attic in Dublin writing, and my husband can hear, you know, me laughing away upstairs in the attic.
The mad woman in the attic.
I know, I'm giving it away. I think so.
Well, actually, while we're on the theme of the mad woman in the attic, there have been...
You said it, not me.
There have been a lot of questions about your writing process from our audience, and you're a very, by your own admission, Monica, you are a very superstitious writer. So I'm curious about your superstitions around your writing and what your workspace looks like. And
I can show you
just one wants to know.
Sorry, Mary Lou, say that last one again.
As is our audience, because everyone wants to know.
No, that I'm very disciplined. That's the first thing to say. So I turn up every day at my desk. I know that it's a lot about imagination, but it's also just absolutely discipline. You've got to, writing is a muscle. You have to turn up every day and work at it. So I do that. But because your writing is in your head, I develop with each of my books various rituals, and I collect things with each book which become a real part of the writing process for me. For example, The House of Memories, with the family in that are called the Foxes. And so I collected dozens of fox figures the whole way I was writing that. The Hello from the Gillespies, a robin, a little robin bird is in that. So I collected all these robins. So they were all on my desk. With the Godmothers, and this isn't a spoiler, I can say this, Sullivan, the little fella that we were talking about, the 12-year-old, 11-year-old, he has a bit of a fixation with ring-tailed lemurs, the gorgeous animal. And I developed one as the book, and foxes were great when I was writing The House of Memories. As it turned out, you can get fox things everywhere. Ring-tailed lemurs are a little harder to find, but I went to Dublin Zoo and Edinburgh Zoo. They had a great, you know, so when there is a visit to Edinburgh Zoo. But this is my desk while I was writing the Godmother.
Wow.
Others. So it still survives from when I wrote The House of Memories. And then I have 9 little ring-tailed lemur toys there. I'm also working on a children's book, which is being published next year, called Marcy Gill and the Caravan Park Cat. My first book for younger read. It's for 10 and under. And I've started collecting black cats too. But I also got this habit. I have a thing about the number 9, that I can only finish writing at the end of the day if my word count ends in 9. And so that became important. And there were 9 of these little lemurs. And I couldn't send off the manuscript I save it into a cloud each day, I email it to myself, unless I had touched each of the 9 lemurs on the head, and then the fox, and then the cat, and then this little golden goose that my sister gave me. So I develop all these rituals, and I understand, like, I'm not obsessive in my own personal life, but when I'm writing, I've realised that they're kind of the little ways that I finish work for the day. Like, as a writer, and you know this, Mary Lou, absolutely, through your writing career too, that it's not like you can clock off, because it's still going on in your head even though you've finished at the end of the day. And for me, I think my rituals of tapping everybody on the head, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
It's a great story, and one of the many, many reasons we love you, Monica. Absolutely. So congratulations once again. 20 years in publishing, and your 13th novel, The Godmothers, and we look forward to your children's book as well.
Thank you. That'll be in April next year, and that's just been such a beautiful experience, because it's a family story set in a caravan park, as I said, for 10 and under. So it's got comedy and drama, but it's also got magic in it. And the joy of being able to make things happen with magic. And also I'm working with this terrific illustrator from South Australia called Danny Snell. And that's been such an amazing experience to watch him turn my characters into these gorgeous illustrations. Because obviously with one of these, they don't have illustrations, but my children's book will have. So yeah, it's a lovely experience. It's been a lovely writing experience. And that will be the first in a series. So I'm working on the second and third books of those too.
Wow.
So, yeah,
fantastic.
Busy.
You are
busy time.
Well, Monica, on behalf of everybody, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a wonderful chat and a wonderful opportunity to find out more about your latest book, The Godmothers. So if you've read it already, you know how wonderful it is. If you haven't, we'll make sure you do. It's well worth it. It's just another gorgeous book from a fabulous, fabulous storyteller. Monica, thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Mary Lou, and thanks so much for everybody at Queensland Libraries for hosting me too, and all of you for tuning in tonight. Thank you.